Tonight is chapter 9, and as we have done, I'll just read the whole chapter. We can't talk about everything, but we will talk about what we can. Chapter 9. In the first year of Darius, son of Ahasuerus, by birth a Mede, who became king over the realm of the Chaldeans. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, perceived in the books the number of years that, according to the word of the Lord to the prophet Jeremiah, must be fulfilled for the devastation of Jerusalem, namely 70 years. Then I turned to the Lord God to seek an answer by prayer and supplication with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. I prayed to the Lord my God and made confession, saying, Ah, Lord, great and awesome God, keeping covenant and steadfast love with those who love you and keep your commandments. We have sinned and done wrong, acted wickedly and rebelled, turning aside from your commandments and ordinances. We have not listened to your servants, the prophets, who spoke in your name to our kings, our princes, and our ancestors, and to all the people of the land. Righteousness is on your side, O Lord, but open shame, as at this day, falls on us, the people of Judah, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and all Israel, those who are near and those who are far away, in all the lands to which you have driven them, because of the treachery that they have committed against you. Open shame, O Lord, falls on us, our kings, our officials, and our ancestors, because we have sinned against you. To the Lord our God belong mercy and forgiveness, for we have rebelled against him and have not obeyed the voice of the Lord our God by following his laws, which he set before us by his servants, the prophets. All Israel has transgressed your law and turned aside, refusing to obey your voice. So the curse and the oath written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, have been poured out upon us because we have sinned against you. He has confirmed his words, which he spoke against us and against our rulers, by bringing upon us a calamity so great that what has been done against Jerusalem has never before been done under the whole heaven. Just as it is written in the law of Moses, all this calamity has come upon us. We did not entreat the favor of the Lord our God, turning from our iniquities and reflecting on his fidelity. So the Lord kept watch over this calamity until he brought it upon us. Indeed, the Lord our God is right in all that he has done, for we have disobeyed his voice. And now, O Lord our God, who brought your people out of the land of Egypt with a mighty hand and made your name renowned even to this day, we have sinned, we have done wickedly. O Lord, in view of all your righteous acts, let your anger and wrath, we pray, turn away from your city, Jerusalem, your holy mountain. Because of our sins and the iniquities of our ancestors, Jerusalem and your people have become a disgrace among all our neighbors. Now, therefore, O our God, listen to the prayer of your servant and to his supplication, and for your own sake, Lord, let your face shine upon your desolated sanctuary. Incline your ear, O my God, and hear. Open your eyes and look at our desolation and the city that bears your name. We do not present our supplication before you on the ground of our righteousness, but on the ground of your great mercies. O Lord, hear. O Lord, forgive. O Lord, listen and act and do not delay. For your own sake, O my God, because your city and your people bear your name. While I was speaking and was praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God on behalf of the holy mountain of my God, while I was speaking in prayer, the man Gabriel, whom I had seen before in a vision, came to me in swift light at the time of the evening sacrifice. He came and said to me, Daniel, I have now come out to give you wisdom and understanding. At the beginning of your supplications, a word went out, and I have come to declare it. for you are greatly beloved. So consider the word and understand the vision. 70 weeks are decreed for your people and your holy city, to finish the transgression, to put an end to sin, and to atone for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal both vision and prophet, and to anoint a most holy place. Know therefore and understand, from the time that the word went out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, until the time of an anointed prince, there shall be 7 weeks, and for 62 weeks it shall be built again with streets and moat, but in a troubled time. After the 62 weeks, an anointed one shall be cut off and shall have nothing, and the troops of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Its end shall come with a flood, and to the end there shall be war. Desolations are decreed. He shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week, and for 1/2 of the week he will make sacrifice and offering cease. And in their place shall be an abomination that desolates, until the decreed end is poured out upon the desolator. Wow. All right. Let's start with the prayer. What is the tone of the prayer? And what are some of the terms you notice and the content of the prayer?
It's contrite.
Contrite, okay? What
Confession,
else? Sorry?
confession,
Confession, yes.
Pleading for mercy.
Pleading for mercy. Did you notice any terms repeated?
Your righteousness.
Okay, your righteousness,
Mhm.
and in one form or another, our sinfulness.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't know what version you might be using, but the word calamity or calamities showed up several times in mine.
He references the law of Moses.
Uh-huh,
Mhm.
the law of Moses and the prophets.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically, virtually all of the Old Testament.
Mhm. He's like Moses in that when Moses appealed to God, he said, but remember, you are merciful and forgiving.
Yeah,
He uses the same terms,
Really?
reminding God that.
not only God's righteousness, but his mercy and compassion or forgiveness, yeah. Yeah. Okay, just for a moment, let's think about what would ever prompt modern day Christians to pray a prayer like this.
You hear people in Ukraine praying prayers like this.
Okay. All right. So if we were going through some sort of national calamity like Ukraine is, maybe we would be more inclined to pray in this tone and
Mhm.
with this sort of content. God's righteousness, mercy, and our
Faithless.
faithlessness.
I think the only time I've ever heard a prayer like this in America is from a televangelist.
Mm.
Yeah. And so that's interesting, Larry. Did the televangelist, this is not fair of me to do this, but I can't stop myself. Did the televangelist pray in a way that exhibited the contrite heart that Daniel is exhibiting?
No.
That was kind of not fair of me, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's all those other people's sins. Yeah, but Daniel owns his own sin.
And he owns
Yeah.
the sin of his fathers or his
Right.
ancestors that he
Right.
wasn't even around to.
Right, that's what's so interesting to me. He is repenting for the group, I mean, for individual, for himself and the group.
For all time.
He's a long way away from the land of
Right.
God. I mean, from Jerusalem,
Mhm.
Right,
but that he cares about them.
yeah, yeah.
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 It's also filled with honor, shame,
Honor, shame,
the passage.
say more, yeah.
Well, where he talks about God's righteousness and the fallenness of humanity
Yeah.
repeatedly.
Yeah,
God is righteous, man is not.
yeah, right.
Well, and he also makes the comment about, that nations know that they are called by his name. And, you know, act, kind of pleading for God to act on behalf of his own name, you know, protecting his own honor.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm confused about what he is asking for. Is he asking for it all to be rebuilt? And I know when we go into later in the chapter, we can kind of surmise that, but in his prayer, he says, forgive, O Lord. Okay, that's what he's asking for, forgiveness. And so then if that happens, will kingdom be restored? Is that kind of what we're thinking?
Or at least their ending of their captivity.
right. I think, and this is one of the difficulties with the book of Daniel, in that we cannot definitively pin down the background circumstances. And we'll get to this, but it is elusive. It could apply. And that there is a kind of general, you might say, theological theme at work here that fits a number of circumstances. But I think the prayer of supplication, this is kind of my sense, he's been reading the book of Jeremiah. If we could imagine him reading the book of Jeremiah, and he sees the reference to the 70 years. And I think okay, oh Lord, when will this come to an end? And he knows, in a way, he has no right to ask that question, but he can't stop himself, so to speak. And he's asking, and he knows that the reason for their difficulty is Israel's sinfulness. And that's not just a yesterday thing. That's been kind of characteristic of the nation of Israel almost from its beginning. So that's my sense, is he's really asking for wisdom or insight, revelation. Explain this to me, O Lord, what's going on? Yeah. Now I'm a little out of order, but there are two prayers that Daniel's prayer here is very similar to Ezra 9 and Nehemiah 9. So at the beginning of the restoration from the Babylonian exile, if you look at Ezra 9 and Nehemiah 9, you get a similar kind of corporate confession. There, Ezra, they're leading the people in confession, really. Here it seems to be just Daniel, even though he is confessing on behalf of his people. But you can see that if you look over there, you can see those comparisons. So this first little bit of discussion is really, I think, a good prompt for us to think about. And this is what people do when they read Daniel, right? They want to know, how does Daniel help us understand our present time? And we're inching toward the end of this study of Daniel, but once we get through these other chapters, and chapters 10 through 12 tend to be a unit together, but we just can't, maybe an overview of the unit and then go back and break it down a little bit. But at some point, we're going to have to deal with these end time scenarios that are related to the book of Daniel, particularly dispensationalism. And so, the strength, you might say, of those end times teachings is that they do get us to think about our experience now in light of the scriptural narrative, in light of God's word and God's will for the world, right? That's a good thing, to to think about how the scripture shows us now something about what is going on. So that's my reason for asking us to start with the prayer of confession there and kind of getting us thinking. What would it be like if we sort of recognized that for example, and I'm just picking things here that are obvious, that are kind of easy targets, but what if Christians confessed our sin for participating in polarizing political polemics? I didn't intend all the alliteration there, but it works. But really, you know, the kind of social media driven acrimony, Christian against Christian. There's a lot of research now that says for a significant number of people, their religious identity is their political identity, their political identity is more important to them than their religious identity. Now that's the words I can say easily, but the thought of that being a Christian,
So you were talking, okay, what you just said,
yeah,
Christians
yes,
identify more with the political structure or identity than their faith.
then their faith, that's right. That's right. Now, this isn't the majority of people, right? It's not necessarily that, but it's a significant percentage. And from where I stand, I think, you know, let me back up and say this. Obviously, we all have opinions about things, right? And we can feel strongly about those opinions. And you know, like what's going on in the United Methodist Church, I have strong opinions, and I'm more inclined to kind of align my viewpoints and my heart with certain people and not with other people. What I'm trying to get at is, when I think about the people who might be my opponents, right, the people I don't agree with, am I willing to misrepresent their motives and make them look really evil? Am I willing to do that, to make my side look better? And when Christians do that with political parties, with Republican, Democrat, or the presidential candidates, that sort of thing, what would it be like? I'm asking us to sort of ponder. And I'm sure there are Christians doing it, it's just not very highly publicized at least. What would it be like for a mass of Christians across denominational lines to agree, we're going to have a day of prayer, fasting, and confession, or something like that? What might happen? What might God do? Because really Daniel, and this is another point we'll get to, Daniel is aware of both God's sovereignty, but also human responsibility. Just because God is sovereign doesn't mean he's pulling all the levers and there's nothing we can do, right? It's all going to happen that way anyway. He's not saying that at all. No, human beings are responsible for the way things are going, and God is sovereign over all of it and working through us. So what would that be like? This may not be, maybe it just be a moment of thinking and not necessarily discussing, but I'm curious about, I'm trying to imagine if a significant number of Christians in this country decided, again, across political lines, whatever. We've done this some with racial divisions, you know. White people, black people have gotten together for kind of mutual confession and repentance and reconciliation. But I'm now thinking in other ways. What would that be like? Okay, I'll stop.
Is that not the purpose of the National Day of Prayer?
Thank you, which was today.
Yeah.
But I don't
And
think
yeah, go ahead.
it didn't seem like it happened.
Yeah. We did have a noon hour prayer service, and there was confession, although it wasn't like Daniel's, I'll put it that way. heartfelt, not exactly like Daniel's. Not to Daniel's extent.
But I think in order to get to the place where you have that kind of confession, you have to do some serious soul searching.
Yeah.
Cause most of the time, like, I think even of, like, the racial tension, you know, you hear people say, and I've thought it, I don't know if I've ever said it, but, you know, like, I wasn't a slave holder, you know, I'm not guilty of that. And you don't hear Daniel saying that.
Yeah.
You don't hear him saying, well, it wasn't me who
Yeah.
did that. He's
Right.
confessing for his fathers, his people before him. And, you know, in order to get to that place, to just be willing to recognize your own involvement, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, because be willing to ask for forgiveness for the things that your great grandparents
Yeah.
were involved in.
Right.
Or did.
Right. Or even, you know, even if your great grandparents weren't involved, that you've still benefited from
Mhm.
things,
Mhm.
right? The willingness to admit that without necessarily having to go too far, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But still to admit that, there's a kind of humility there that Daniel is exhibiting for us.
Mhm.
To me, one of the biggest parts is the identifying with my people. These are my people, and we were not faithful to the Lord. And just like somebody said earlier, it's not that, I mean, Daniel kind of looks like a hero in this book, right? He was faithful. But rather than standing on his own righteousness, he identifies with his people, which is pretty amazing. I think there's a lesson to learn there. But we only have an hour, so I got stuff to do. All right. Verse 1, let's look at Jeremiah 51, verse 24. Somebody read that for us, please. 51:24.
I set a snare for you, and you were taken, O Babylon, and you did not know it. You were found and caught because you opposed the Lord.
Okay, so the addressee here is Babylon. Now, verses 28 and 29, just to get a little, I mean, we could read this whole section, but just to get a little taste, 28 and 29.
A voice, they flee and escape from the land of Babylon to declare in Zion the vengeance of the Lord our God, vengeance for his temple. Summon archers against Babylon, all those who bend the bow. Encamp around her, let no one escape. Repay her according to her deeds. Do to her according to all she has done. For she has proudly defied the Lord, the Holy One of Israel.
Okay, that's 51, 28, and 29. Did it say, does it refer to the Medes in your verse 28?
No?
Doesn't mind. Will you read that?
Yes,
Yeah, I
so
do.
your version does not refer to the Medes in verse 28.
That's
51.
right.
Wow, okay.
Oh, wait, I'm 50. Never mind. I'm in the wrong chapter.
Okay,
Oh, phew.
all right. Yeah, Joanne, go ahead.
Okay, 28, 29.
Yeah.
Prepare the nations for battle against her, the kings of the Medes, their governors and all their officials, and all the countries they rule. The land trembles and writhes, for the Lord's purposes against Babylon stand, to lay waste the land of Babylon so that no one will live there.
Okay, now, Daniel 9, verse 1, gives us the impression that Daniel is reading or thinking about, referring to the prophet Jeremiah. And he sees there in the prophet Jeremiah, which, by the way, this is the late 7th century. So when Jeremiah is writing, Babylon is the power. But he sees, however he sees it, that the Medes, the kingdom of the Medes, will overtake Babylon. So here's this word of the Lord through Jeremiah about Babylon, and Daniel 9 is now, the setting of Daniel 9 is that Daniel is witnessing the outcome of the Medes overtaking the Babylonians. So in other words, it's sort of like he has been watching history unfold according to the word of the Lord through the prophet Daniel. So again, I'm asking us to kind of work in our minds with what that would feel like. You know, we're watching it happen.
First of all, it's hard to see it when you're watching it happen. It's almost like you're so close to the events that you can't see what's going on.
Right, but
So
then
it's-
you read in Jeremiah, wow, it's happened,
That's what's
it
going
happened
on.
just the way
Yeah,
God said it would happen,
yeah.
you know? I mean,
Mhm.
I'm
And
thinking,
wasn't it,
yeah,
and remind me, wasn't it the Medes, wasn't it, whatever his name is, Babushas, the king of those guys?
Ahasuerus?
Ahasuerus, didn't he tell the captives to go home?
Cyrus,
Cyrus. So he
Cyrus
was
is the-
after that?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. No, sorry. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, he is.
I get my chronology out of order here, yeah. Okay, so also in Daniel 9, we read about this 70-year period. So let's go to Jeremiah chapter 25, verses 11 and 12. And Joni, would you read that?
This whole land shall become a ruin and a waste, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. Then after 70 years are completed, I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, the land of the Chaldeans, for their iniquity, declares the Lord, making the land an everlasting waste.
Okay, so that's happened. So we have this 70 years. And one of the events that Jeremiah, or outcomes that Jeremiah has prophesied has happened. Babylon has been overthrown by the Medes. Okay, Lord, what do we make of the 70 years? You know, it's a period of time. Has it come to an end? Is this the time you're going to restore Jerusalem? Well, Daniel knows about the restoration that's mentioned or alluded to in chapter 9, where in 539 they start going back to Jerusalem and you know, kind of rebuilding things. But Daniel is also living still in an unstable situation of, we could say, oppression, right? God's people are still scattered. Some have gone back, but a lot of them are still scattered. Okay, Lord, what's going on? And please tell me, even though I know we're sinful people, we don't deserve an answer from you, but would you give us one?
Sort of.
So he does,
Sort of.
whatever
it means.
Okay, this is where we just take a moment and refer back to chapter 8, right? So chapter 8, chapter 9, chapters 10 through 12, there's a lot of kind of overlapping of content here, and it's really involved, and we're just gonna hit a couple of examples and then maybe come back toward the very end of our sessions and try to see if we can put some things together. But if you think about the 500s, And these numbers don't add up perfectly, right? But if you think about the 500s into the 160s, which is where the scholars that I think are the most convincing really believe that these references, for example, in chapter 8, that's a reference to Antiochus IV. So we're talking about the little horn that becomes the horn with the mouth that speaks arrogantly, and it really looks like Antiochus Epiphanes. He thinks he's God. So now okay, so what is that? 500s into the 100, it's not exactly numerically
Are these
precise.
numbers, I mean, it's kind of like in the other apocryphal literature, the numbers are not ordinal per se. Are they? Are we talking 70? Are we talking completeness, fullness of time?
Exactly, I mean, the symbolic nature of these numbers is pretty evident. And yet they still have to mean something, and so that's where it gets interesting, but also kind of maddening, because we can't really pin anything down. Okay, we maybe don't have to belabor this since we did it already, but how is Yahweh described in Daniel's prayer?
Merciful.
Merciful, compassionate, righteous, faithful. And how are God's people described?
Just the opposite.
Just the opposite, unfaithful, fickle, wicked, serving other gods, going their own way. Now we get into the allusions. So again, I'm asking you to imagine Daniel studying scripture. Look at verse 11 in chapter 9 of Daniel.
Lost Daniel.
Daniel 9:11.
Written in the law.
You want me to read that?
So here we have verse 11. Refusing to obey your voice, so the curse and the oath written in the law of Moses. Okay. Look at verse 13. Just as it is written in the law of Moses, all this calamity has come upon us. Where in the law of Moses? We have the blessings and the curses. So let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 27. Deuteronomy 27. Starting with verse 11, we won't read these, but you can scan. These are the curses. Now we moderns, very much shaped by certain kind of ethics, and I mean this with all due respect, please. But we live by a kind of be nice ethic. And all of us have learned, if you can't say anything good, don't say anything at all. So anytime we run across something like this, I mean, curses, I mean, it seems extremely harsh and damning and judgmental and
Unless it's your boundary stone that was moved.
exactly. So, yeah, so here we have, we have Yahweh, the Lord, saying these things through Moses to the people. And keeping in mind that God is righteous, God cannot sin. So we might wince a little bit, but if I put it this way, God has a right to say these things. And we would need to, if we were going to really study this, we'd want to get into what does cursed mean here? And one way of thinking about it, which I think is a good way, is that it's not that God is zapping somebody with like a bad spell, right? Cursed is a little bit like, this is what happens when you offend the moral order of the universe. And the moral order of the universe is rooted in God, right? In his person. He is righteous. He created a world that's good. When we offend his moral order, we're just going to run into trouble. And that's pretty close to what it means by cursed. So we kind of bring these things on ourselves. It's not like God pulls out his Harry Potter wand and does one of those things, you know? And I think all of us, I certainly could tell you from my own experience, when I've just ignored what I know to be true and right, when I ignore that and try to just go my own way, invariably I get myself in trouble and, you know, have to eat some humble pie. Okay, so there is Daniel alluding to something like Deuteronomy 27? Look at Deuteronomy 28. These verses, verse 15, I just pulled these out just to try to help us. If you will not obey the Lord your God by diligently observing all his commandments and decrees, which I'm commanding you today, then all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. It's just not going to go well. Verse 25. The Lord will cause you to be defeated before your enemies. Well, that happened, right? The Babylonians. It also happened in Joshua and Judges. So, okay. Verse 32. Your sons and daughters shall be given to another people while you look on. You will strain your eyes looking for them all day, but be powerless to do anything. This is, you know, the spoils of war. My people have been taken into captivity. Verse 36. The Lord will bring you and the king whom you set over you to a nation that neither you nor your ancestors have known, where you shall serve other gods of wood and stone. So we can imagine, I think, Daniel kind of coming to grips with, he is seeing history play itself out just the way God said it would for God's people. Okay, back in Daniel chapter 9, he also makes reference to the prophets. And we could, a lot of examples here. But let's go back to Jeremiah, since we've been in Jeremiah, but look at Jeremiah 5. These verses speak to me in a way, because what really gets to me is the piety of these people who have actually wandered away from the Lord, you know, and this will be clear, I think. Run to and fro, this is verses 1-3 of chapter 5. Run to and fro through the streets of Jerusalem. Look around and take note. Search its squares and see if you can find one person who acts justly and seeks truth, so that I may pardon Jerusalem. Hyperbole here, but still, we get a general character of Jerusalem. Although they say, here's the piety, as the Lord lives, yet they swear falsely. That's breaking one of the 10 commandments. Do not take the name of the Lord in vain. Don't use the Lord's name, his honor, in a false witness kind of situation. So people use this pious language and still swear, still break the commandment. Verse 3, O Lord, do your eyes not look for truth? You have struck them, but they felt no anguish. You have consumed them, but they refused to take correction. I don't know, these just seem pretty apt, I think. Now the same chapter, verses 30 and 31. An appalling and horrible thing has happened in the land. The prophets prophesy falsely. And the priests rule as the prophets direct, or your version may say the priests rule on their own authority, or something close to that. My people love to have it so. Let's just make a deal. We're gonna pretend that everything's okay. You tell me what I want to hear, Mr. Prophet. We'll live that way and everything will be okay. Okay, one more. Chapter 7. I put 3 through 10 there. We won't do all of them, but starting with verse 3. Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, amend your ways and your doings, and let me dwell with you in this place. And this place, of course, is the temple, the Lord's dwelling place. But then look at verse 4. Do not trust in these deceptive words. This is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. And then if you go on and read there, you can see that it's almost like a little mantra, right? This is the temple of the Lord. This place can never be destroyed because the Lord lives here. He would never let that happen. This is the temple of the Lord. And of course, that temple gets destroyed by the Babylonians. So we go back to Daniel 9, thinking about Daniel, sort of thoughts like these running through his head, where he's newly aware or sort of having his awareness refreshed, however we think of that. I sort of feel like Daniel is feeling the weight of the history of his people. And he's now beseeching God to show him, when will this end? And one more allusion. I think there are a number of scriptural allusions here, but back in chapter 9 of Daniel, verse 17. Now therefore, O our God, listen to the prayer of your servant and to his supplication, and for your own sake, Lord, let your face shine upon your desolated sanctuary. And that shine upon sort of language is in the prayer, the benediction of the priest Aaron back in Numbers. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you, etc., right? The old MYF benediction.
Moses. Yeah, I was trying to, nothing. I was trying to put Moses in there for MYF, but I couldn't figure out how to do it.
Okay. All right. Any thoughts? I've been rambling on here quite a bit, so.
I have a question or observation, I guess, and I'm trying to put it into coherent thought. But essentially, Daniel is hearkening back to the prophets and also the law of Moses, which is the way we understand it now. It's the law of sin and death. We have substitutionary atonement, and we don't have prophets the same way that they did in the Old Testament. So how are we supposed to live?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And that, I mean, there's, this is a side part of the answer, but if you look down, verse 24, we're going to come back to this, but
Okay.
you see here, it says, and to atone for iniquity. So
Yeah.
God makes this promise, there's an atonement coming. And this is where Christians start to try to figure out how maybe to some degree this prophecy is fulfilled in Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Then I think more directly, and I admit to you, I'm now thinking out of the content of some of the content of my sermon for this Sunday, because Jesus tells us it's going to be in John 15, you know, that we're to we're to obey the Lord's commands, right? Obey his
Yeah.
commands.
Yeah.
A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. So we know that much. So to me, there's a way for Christians to try to figure out how we obey the Lord in light of Christ fulfilling the law and prophets. And now what does that mean for us?
Well, we're still ordered to repent.
Yeah.
Yeah, we sure are.
Well, and if you read those, the curses, you can, it's easy, I mean, we live by those. We obey the opposite of the curses. I mean, you know, just in our, everybody knows that it's wrong to move your neighbor's boundary line.
Yeah,
You know, that we do those things. We obey. We obey much of what is written in the law. Just out of Christian
oh, I see what you're saying. So
Christian
Christians,
obedience.
so with hearts changed by Christ and the presence of the Spirit, we are, I'll put it this way, we're morally sensitive to those kinds of situations, and we want to do the right
Yes,
thing.
yes.
Okay, I'm following.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, at one point in history, those things were unfamiliar to everybody except for the Jews. But since Christ's coming, you know, the world really is a different place than it was then. There really are people who, I don't mean that they're, righteous by their own actions, you know, but I'm just saying that those things that are commanded in Deuteronomy, for example, are some of the things that have changed the world. No, I know I'm not communicating very well, but it's
well,
like,
yeah, I'm just trying to,
They've been incorporated into our laws of how to live together socially.
exactly.
yeah,
And so much so that we don't even notice them anymore. Like, we just think everybody knows that.
or we take them as just a natural part of life. and
Maybe,
we don't-
yeah.
we don't remember that actually this is God's way of living, and we
It
think we
really
can
has
have,
revolutionized the world.
we think we can have all that good stuff without necessarily honoring God.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's go back to chapter 9 of Daniel, and notice after the prayer, and just in the way the scriptural narrative is laid out, look at verse 20. While I was speaking and was praying and confessing my sin, etc. Now jump down to verse 23. Gabriel says to Daniel, at the beginning of your supplications, a word went out, and I've come to declare it, for you are greatly beloved. So the clear implication is that virtually before Daniel started praying, God was already answering his prayer. And one of the scholars I'm following, John Golden, makes this point that the scriptures consistently place before us God's sovereign action. God is not dependent on anything but his own character, you might say, his own power. He can act as he chooses. God's sovereign action. At the same time, human action really matters. So this is not fatalism. Well, it's just going to happen. You know, whatever will be, right? It's just going to happen. Everything happens for a reason. That's one of those half-truths that gets bent out of shape.
Yeah.
Right? It's been out of shape. So the Bible is very clear. Our actions matter. We can change relationships, conditions, structures, Nations rise and fall because of human actions, but God is sovereign over all of it, and God is active in it. And here's an example in Daniel 9 of, he's praying, but already God, before he starts praying, God is on the move.
Doesn't that speak to the genuineness in Daniel's heart towards his people and seeking God's forgiveness and mercy in this situation? That, God obviously sees Daniel as a almost like a faultless person seeking mercy on
Yeah,
behalf of the people.
yeah. Yeah, he is a model believer in a way, and this is that God's sovereignty and human responsibility sort of thing, because God could have seen Daniel's heart as not sincere, not humble.
Right.
He's just mouthing the words because he's
Right.
trying to get something out of God. And then God could have decided, I'm not answering that prayer. And then the Bible might have said, well, God hardened Daniel's heart, right? It's that sort of back and forth. Okay. Now, we're getting down to the sort of the brass tacks with when's all this gonna happen? What?
In 7 minutes.
Yeah, I know. We may not get to everything, but, okay. 9:24. 70 weeks are decreed for your people. 70 weeks of years, right? So here's the symbolism of the number 70. Weeks, probably not literal weeks, not 7-day periods. And that would be 490 years. So again, let's imagine being Daniel, and God through Gabriel is saying these things to him. 70 weeks. Okay, it's kind of precise and not at the same time, right? We don't really know exactly how to pin down that number. But anyway, whatever that period of time means, and this is where we get into the dispensationalist kind of viewpoints and other things, and I promise you we'll get to that if I can ever figure out how to present it. Okay? 6 things will be achieved, and I'm really following John Goldingay at this point, even though they're listed right here in the scripture. So I put them. He says there are 3 negatives and 3 positives, so to speak. We could say it that way. So verse 24. These 70 weeks of years include these outcomes: the transgression, to put an end to finish the transgression. Okay, what's the transgression? Generally, the transgression of Israel, the waywardness of Israel, is back to Larry's point. Is that transgression brought to an end when Christ comes and sins are atoned for, or is Daniel understanding this a little more closely to his own period of time?
There's no indication that Daniel understood it at all.
Well,
Do you mean, did Gabriel understand it?
well, Daniel the book, sorry.
Okay.
Daniel the book, yeah. Okay, to finish the transgression, to put an end to sin. Now, again, Christians go, oh, well, we know exactly what that means. Is Daniel the book a little more narrowly focused in terms of chronology? And we can say yes to both of those things, because again, this kind of prophetic visionary language is meant to be elusive and expansive, and it doesn't have to apply just to one set of circumstances, even though that's frustrating to those of us who want to nail everything down. To atone for iniquity. And then on the positive side, to bring in everlasting righteousness. To seal both vision and prophet. So let's go back to 8:24. Here's an example of how these visions connect and overlap. 8:24. hold on, 8:20, I don't mean 24. What did I say there? Yeah, that's just the wrong, look down, 26. 8:26 is what it should be. Excuse me for the wrong number. The vision of the evenings and the mornings that has been told is true. Remember the 2300 number. As for you, seal up the vision, for it refers to many days from now. And here we have in 9, we're sealing both the vision and the prophet. And then to anoint a most holy place. Now, one of the points that Golden Gate makes is that there's no definite articles anywhere in those, right? Except for the transgression, but everything is, fairly expansive.
Yeah.
So when did the word to restore Jerusalem go out? Okay, that's again, we're going back to that 20 through 23. Well, Cyrus issued the edict for the Jews to be able to go back to Jerusalem, and that's when the restoration started. There's also a restoration during the 160s under the Maccabees, when Antiochus IV is, when he dies and the temple is cleansed and restored, and they start offering the morning and evening sacrifice again. Verse 26 in chapter 9, what is this anointed prince? After the 62 weeks, an anointed one shall be cut off and shall have nothing, and the troops of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. And again, I think most of the scholars, that certainly the ones I'm following, think that is actually in the 2nd century BC. And in verse 27, he will make sacrifice and offering cease. And that's what happened during that basically 3.5 year period. So we've got these prophecies, we've got these numbers, we've got these symbols. What do they mean? To what do they refer? And we want to kind of pin these things down and get it all mapped out so that we can see. And Bible scholars say it just doesn't, these texts don't lend themselves to that kind of, and it's a little frustrating, but at the same time, what it does is for me, I think one of the most important parts of this, I'm not just a spectator, right? This is all going to happen this way, and I'm just watching it happen until God does whatever he's going to do, right? No. I think Daniel is showing us he knows he's in this history, right? And that human actions make a difference, even though God is sovereign. I think that's something that's really worth our thinking about, because I get the feeling like, well, I can't really do anything. This is all just kind of happening, and I'm sort of watching it happen. And that feeling of powerlessness is, I think, very prominent in our day and time. And this is the word to say, nope, you can stand up, you can be faithful, you can resist when you need to resist, and God's going to be with you, and his purposes will get done. All right. More to come. 8 through 12. Yeah.
One question.
Yeah.
It's between translations. In verse 25 refers to the anointed one. The NASB refers to the Messiah.
Aha.
So
Don't they mean the same
I
thing?
mean, that's, the NASB comes more directly from the Greek, or? I don't know.
It's,
I mean,
it's
I just-
understood to be a more literal translation. That's really, I mean, that's one of those could go either way because, again, Golden Gate thinks that the anointed one is really what we have during this 2nd century, we have the priest king, right?
Mhm.
So anointed one, he thinks I didn't really touch on this, but it was on the slide. Onias III would have been the anointed one referred to there. And he was deposed, Onias the priest was deposed by Antiochus. So it, it kind of fits that part of Daniel 9. Okay, so we'll keep working through this.